Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to pick the perfect tomato at the peak of ripeness to preserve and enjoy the absolute best flavor. I'm also going to show you my favorite 5-minute quick recipe for using your homegrown tomatoes. You don't want to miss it, it's coming up. Now, tomatoes ripen from the inside out. So when they're ripe on the outside, they're definitely ripe on the inside. So when is a tomato ready to pick? When it's red. Well, with some it's almost that easy, but not quite. But for tomatoes that are supposed to be green when they're ripe, or green and another color, what then? Well, let's get the red ones out of the way first, and then we'll go there. So with red tomatoes like this one here, which is called Steakhouse, you just want to see a deep red color. And tomatoes, red tomatoes, go from green to greenish yellow to yellowish orange to orange to orangish red. Right somewhere in that point is the ones you get at the grocery store. And then from orange red, they turn into a deep, vibrant red color. But wait, we need to back up. You could do it that way and get what you get, take your chances, or you could plan ahead. A couple days before they're ready to harvest, when they're basically at the orange-red stage, you want to withhold watering. Stop watering them altogether. Now, they may start to wilt or curl their leaves. They're just being dramatic. When tomatoes are short on water, they concentrate their sugars and flavor inside the fruit. Need I say more? So now this tomato is a deep red and it hasn't had water for 4 days. It's ready. It's at its peak of flavor and its peak of ripeness. It's never going to get any better than this. So I'm ready to pick it. And you can see right here the deep red color. There's no green like this one next to it. There's still some yellowy, orangey color to it. In fact, a lot of it's orange. But this one is ready. Gorgeous. And I choose to clip them off instead of just rip them off, because a lot of times when you rip them, you'll pull the stem right out, and sometimes that can open up a wound for some rotting, or and I think it possibly lasts better with this on. But you can do it either way. Now, what about non-red varieties, like all of these yellow and orange ones you see here? Well, you just want to wait until every last bit of green is gone. And a lot of times it helps to look at the seed packet or online, the company you got them from, or Google the name of the variety, and take a look at what it's supposed to look like when ripe. Is there any green left in it? Is it all orange? Is it yellow orange? And that's going to give you a good idea as well. You can see with these three here, obviously these are green. This one is more orange, whereas this one still has some yellow to it and even some green. But this one is 100% orange, so I'm going to clip it off. Now, what about varieties that are green or green and another color when they're ripe? Well, at that point, they're a little more difficult to find the ripeness by visually looking at them. You need to do the squeeze test. And it works for all tomatoes, but it's most helpful for green tomatoes. Now, if you're making something like fried green tomatoes, any of the green tomatoes you see here will work. You don't have to have a green variety. A fried green tomato needs an unripe tomato, basically, because the structure of an unripe tomato is very firm, and so it won't fall apart when frying. If you cut up one of these and try to fry it, it's going to fall apart in the pan. So when it comes to green tomatoes, which I don't have any, but the squeeze test works on all colors. An unripe tomato is going to have a very firm feel to it. You can almost squeeze it as hard as you can, and it's not really going to budge at all. Whereas a tomato that is ripe, if you squeeze it, you almost feel like you're going to bruise the tomato. You can feel definite give. Now, if your finger punches right into it, it's probably a little overripe. So that's a good way to tell if a green tomato is ripe, just by feeling it. Now, the worst case scenario is going to be you pick it a little early. As long as you don't refrigerate them, they will still ripen off the vine. Just put them in a spot that's relatively cool, between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. But between those two temperatures is the ideal ripening range for tomatoes. Will the flavor be as good as a tomato that was allowed to ripen on the vine? The jury's still out on that one. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Are tomatoes as good if they're picked a little before ripeness and brought in for ripening in the house? And sometimes you might have to do that. Maybe a big storm is coming. Maybe you've got some little critters around that are going to steal your tomatoes and you want to get them in before they do. Sometimes it's just a necessity. But don't refrigerate your tomatoes, especially the unripe ones. When you put a tomato in the refrigerator that is unripe, it actually stops the chemical process that is responsible for flavor and aroma, and it stops it ripening. It will never get that good flavor that you want. That's one of the reasons store-bought tomatoes have no flavor. They're picked green and refrigerated immediately. Now sometimes you have to refrigerate a tomato. Maybe you've got so many and you just can't eat them before they go bad. So a so-so tomato out of the refrigerator is better than a moldy one that you have to throw away. Now a ripe tomato in the fridge, science says don't leave it in there longer than 4 days. After 4 days, the chemical compounds that create or maintain the flavor and structure of the tomato are pretty much dead. So if you have to put it in the fridge, bring it out before 4 days, let it sit out, come to room temperature, and some, not all, but some of the flavor will come back. I'm going to use the red ones in salsa because if you've watched me for any length of time, you know I'm not a huge red tomato fan unless it's mixed with something. Salsa, sauce, some things, herbs and spices and different flavors to get rid of the red, strong tomato flavor. I just don't like that, which is why you see mostly yellow and orange tomatoes here. Now we're going to be using these to make a quick and simple 5-minute caprese salad today for lunch. But I also need to grab some basil. Let's go. All right, so I've got my tomato, I've got my basil. In addition to that, I have some fresh mozzarella cheese, and I got this at Costco. It comes marinated in olive oil and spices. It's delicious. So if you have a Costco, grab some of that. Then you want some salt and freshly ground pepper. And optional, I like it, you may not, is some balsamic vinegar. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually pluck all the leaves off of the basil. And then we're going to take those leaves and we're going to stack them up on top of each other, just like a stack of pancakes. And then we're going to roll them up long ways like a little cigar. And then just start slicing really thin. I'm not a professional, so don't judge my knife skills. And what you're going to end up with is some basil confetti. Push that aside. Now we're going to cut the tomato. I'd say for one person, probably going to be about a half of a tomato. So now I'm just going to cut, I'm going to core the tomato. And then I'm just going to chop it in, some medium chunks. Not too small, not like a salsa, like a pico. Okay, so now we're going to assemble it. And I'm going to start with the tomato. Throw in some of the mozzarella balls. Now if you don't get the mozzarella that's already in oil, you can take some olive oil and just kind of drizzle it over the top. And then some cracked pepper, salt, this is the pink Himalayan, the basil, and just a drizzle of the balsamic. Can't wait to try it. All right. So the sweetness of the tomato and the tart of the vinegar. Summer in a bowl. So delicious. Okay. Let me know down below what your favorite recipe is for your homegrown tomatoes. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, hit the thumbs up button, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.